أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله. Today we are going to dive into one of the conversations that the Imam had with the last of the three people on the list of Yazid, whom Yazid wanted bay'ah from no matter what. This dialogue is with a very important person and significant individual who is going to have a big impact on Islamic history after Ashura. His name is Abdullah bin Zubayr. There were three people, as we said before, that Yazid wanted bay'ah from. One was, of course, obviously Imam Hussein. One was Abdullah, son of Umar ibn al-Khattab, second Khalifa, the son of the second Khalifa. And then we have another Abdullah, Abdullah bin Zubayr, Abdullah, son of Zubayr, the great companion of Rasulullah, who died in the battle of Jamal. This Zubayr is the father of Abdullah. So Abdullah, you can say, is maybe from the same generation of Imam Hussein. And they're contemporaries. But Abdullah bin Zubayr, once again, he is a companion of Rasulullah in the sense that some of the other schools of thought look at, the way they look at companionship and suhbah, they call it, being a sahabi. Usually what you will hear is that the definition of a sahabi is someone who saw the Holy Prophet while they were also Muslim. A person who falls under that category, some rules and laws will come with it. They have extra respect. They're not infallible, but they are kind of untouchable, it seems. And you can't really question them too much. Because at the end of the day, whatever they do, they are going to end up in Jannah. That's not according to the Shia school, of course. That's according to the Sunni school. The Shia school differs here. They say just because someone's Sahabi doesn't mean we can't question them, even their intentions. For everyone, the test is equal. Anyway, this Abdullah bin Zubayr, he saw the Holy Prophet. God knows how young he was, but he did meet the Prophet apparently. And so that makes him a Sahabi. His report card, though, doesn't look too good in the Shia school of thought. As I said, in other schools of thought, you can't really question this that much, but in the Shia school, you can question. What happens is we have a couple things, or two or three things that really taint this report card of his. Number one is the dogs of Hawab, it's called. A place called Hawab. What happens is the Battle of Jamal, which is the first of three civil wars during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen's rule as Khalifa. The Battle of Jamal, when it was taking place, Aisha was going towards Basra. And she was objecting to the Khilafah of Ali ibn Abi Talib, with the excuse that, of course, Uthman has been killed. The killers of Uthman are being sheltered by you, O Ali. You better hand them over to us. Ali ibn Abi Talib, for different reasons, one of them, most importantly, being that, first of all, we don't even know exactly who. There was a lot of commotion. People were killed there. We don't know exactly who, first of all. And for other reasons, Ali ibn Abi Talib said, I'm not going to listen to that condition that everyone has. Muawiyah has, Aisha has. And they're not giving me their bay'ah as a result. No, I'm Khalifa. You have to give me bay'ah just like you did with the previous three Khalifas, right? On the way to Basra, she's objecting, right? On the way to Basra, she hears some dogs barking. And she asks, what is the name of this land? They say it's Hawab. And she says, okay, wait a minute. Hold everything. Everyone hold your horses. No pun intended. They were going with horses and camels, right? Hold your horses. We're not going to go forward. Why? Because I remember the Holy Prophet, he said, when you hear the barking of the dogs of Hawab, O Aisha, know that you're not on the right path or you're making a mistake. Something in that along those lines. if this is Hawab and these are the dogs that I'm hearing are barking, take me back to Medina. Who was the one who convinced her that no, this is not the land of Hawab? Who was it? It was this Abdullah bin Zubayr. He was her nephew actually, as well. He says, Auntie, this is not the land of Hawab. He swears that this is not the land of Hawab, convinces her that this is not the land of Hawab, and she continues on her journey. Well, right here, does the Prophet have to tell you something like this? Or did you teach us that your father, when he was Khalifa, or the second Khalifa, or the third Khalifa, that if someone's Khalifa, we have to listen to them, right? That's what you taught us. How come when it's Ali ibn Abi Talib's turn, people don't want to listen to him? Anyway, we don't want to talk too much history here. He caused her to continue. If she had gone back, the Battle of Jamal wouldn't have taken place. Someone might say, well, what's so bad about the Battle of Jamal taking place? Wasn't Ali ibn Abi Talib victorious in that battle? The Battle of Jamal is what allowed people to, hey, fight the Khalifa of your time. It's okay. Before that, no one had ever fought the Khalifa of their time. The Battle of Jamal gave this excuse to some that, hey, if you feel like something is wrong, it's okay. You can stand up and fight against the Khalifa of your time. That's why the Battle of Siffin took place. After that, as a result of the Battle of Siffin, the Battle of Nahrawan took place. Out of the Battle of Nahrawan, the Khawarij, they were angry. Eventually, they killed Amir al-Mu'mineen, assassinated him. So you can see that the Battle of Jamal taking place leads to all of these bad chain of events that eventually leads to who? The Shahada of who? Shahada of Ali ibn Abi Talib. So this person with his lie, according to history, and saying that this land is not the land of Hawab, allowed this battle to happen. That's in this report card. Battle of Jamal is about to take place. His father Zubair wants to fight Ali ibn Abi Talib. Ali ibn Abi Talib, they say before the Battle of Jamal took place, he brought Talha and Zubair. It says they got so close to each other that their horses' necks were like crossing each other. That's how close they got. Something like that. And Imam Ali was speaking to them and whispering to them. And apparently he had told them that, hey, what are you doing? Don't you remember the Prophet? He said this, he said that. The Prophet said when a time like this comes, don't fight each other and so on. Don't you remember? Imam Ali was so convincing to the point that they say Zubair said, he's right. I am calling off the war, the Battle of Jamal. I'm calling it off. Isn't that wonderful? Who got in the way of that? Who said, oh father, I feel like you're getting a little scared? Abdullah, his son. And provoked his father, Zubair, to prove to everyone that no, I'm not scared. He drew his sword, he ran in the middle of the army. And they say Ali ibn Abi Talib told his soldiers, don't attack him. He just wants to prove something. But the point is that who's the one who provoked all of this, allowed all of this? Once again, Abdullah bin Zubair, the son of Zubair, is the one who's doing this. He's behind all of this. I'm just saying all of this so that we know what type of person he is. So that when he speaks to Imam Hussein and acts like he cares for Imam Hussein, we can read through all of that. See through all of that. So this hadith is famous by Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, مَا زَالَ الزُّبَيْرُ مِنَّا أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ حَتَّى نَشَأَ إِبْنُهُ الْمَشْؤُومُ عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. That Zubair was one of us, Ahlul Bayt. Zubair is the one who was in the house of Fatima Zahra when they attacked the house of Fatima. He drew his sword against the ones who came after Saqifa to get bay'ah from Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's how high Zubair was during Imam Ali's time. The Prophet's time, of course, he was a warrior and he served the Prophet so much. So Imam Ali in this hadith, he says, Zubair was one of us, Ahlul Bayt, until his son grew up. His son Abdullah grew up. And sometimes, now this is for the older ones, and we've seen this throughout history. I've seen it in my life too. Not in my personal life, but I've seen others. Sometimes even a great scholar, as their children grow up, one of them turns out to be a bad apple and influences the parents, influences the father. Personally, I've seen this in one of the lives of one of the ulama out there. That his son influenced him in a bad way. It happens. Abdullah, son of Zubair, messed everything up, and the Battle of Jamal took place. The Battle of Jamal takes place, brothers and sisters, I want you to remember this. If the Battle of Jamal takes place, all the other bad stuff that's not supposed to happen is going to happen after it. Sometimes you do one wrong thing, but it has this ripple effect, and it will have implications for such a long time. That's why we have hadith that whoever sanna sunnatan hasanatan, whoever establishes a good sunnah, a good tradition, a good practice, they will also take some of the rewards of those who act upon this tradition in the future. But the opposite also holds. If you establish a bad tradition, a bad practice, and that's why we have to be very careful. Those of you who are older, how we act in front of our children, in home, at school, wherever, as a teacher, as an organizer of a program, whatever it is, as a sheikh, whatever it is, if you establish a bad practice, if I, for example, am sitting up here and the first thing that catches your eye is my Rolex, and I speak about it, I talk about these things, and you feel like, okay, this is what it's all about. No, Ahlul Bayt, that's not how they did it. Every position is different. Every position is different. Every position has its own etiquettes and rules and unwritten rules that you have to go by. Every person out there that has an influence on at least another person, this hadith might apply to them that, hey, be careful. If you establish something that's not right, then the wizr and the responsibility and burden of those who act upon that bad practice that you established is going to be on you too. Sometimes the act isn't too big, but through that act we're establishing something very wrong that goes on and on forever. Yeah? What's $1 a day? $1 a day, $1 is not too much. But if you keep saving up $1 a day after 20, 30 years, how much is that going to be? Now just translate that into thawab and iqab, reward and punishment. Every single day, a person is acting upon something that I established as something wrong. Well, one day is one little punishment, 2, 3, 4. Before you know it, my whole life, and after I pass away even, people who are acting on what I established, the bad is coming to me too. And the good also holds, as I said. The good also holds as well. So we have to be very careful. Abdullah bin Zubayr, I don't know if you knew or not, but by allowing the Battle of Jamal to take place, the responsibility and the burden of whatever happened afterwards will come on his shoulders. And we say this with the utmost respect to the other schools of thought. This is the Shia's criticism here of someone who is seen as a Sahabi. Now some might say, oh, this part of history never happened. Okay, then we can't continue the discussion. But if this part of history did happen, the discussion needs to be held that why cannot we question this? Anyway, this is all on the side, brothers and sisters. Abdullah bin Zubayr meets Abu Abdullah al-Hussein in Mecca. So we had 3 people in Medina: Abdullah bin Umar, Abdullah bin Zubayr, Hussein ibn Ali. These 3 were in Medina. Yazid said, I want bay'ah from them. Abdullah bin Zubayr right away leaves Medina for Mecca, overnight even maybe, so that he doesn't give bay'ah. Abdullah bin Umar was already out of Medina. We talked about this before. And we talked about what he said to Imam Hussein when he met Imam Hussein. There's one more person, this Abdullah bin Zubayr, that I gave a brief history on, who now meets Imam Hussein in Mecca. He had gone to Mecca sooner. Imam Hussein now is coming through Mecca and is staying in Mecca. Imam Hussein tells him, verily my father told me that there will be it says Kabsh. Now Kabsh, I'll just say someone, okay? Verily my father told me that there will be someone in Mecca because of which the sanctity of Mecca will be compromised. And I do not want to be that person. Abu Abdullah al-Hussein is telling this to who? To Abdullah bin Zubayr. If I were to be killed outside of Mecca by a handspan, it would be more preferred by me than me being killed inside of Mecca. So we're going through these sayings to take lesson from all of them, brothers and sisters, right? We're not doing just sheer history here. We're trying to get stuff out of each of these lines of gold. Abu Abdullah right here gives you a key of gold. He says, for me, to die outside of Mecca is more important than to die inside of Mecca. What was the criterion before we covered? Where life and death sometimes can be victory and life and death can sometimes be defeat. I talked about this before. Here he is talking about that same thing again. Imam Hussein, what more could one ask for? To die in Mecca. Yes, some of us want a shortcut. Some of the rich people out there, they want a shortcut sometimes. When they die in their will, they say like, I don't care how much it's going to cost. I want you to bury me, I don't know, like next to the grave of this Imam or this son of Imam or daughter of Imam. And they can afford it. That's some real high-priced real estate, brothers and sisters, to be buried in a haram. But brothers and sisters, at the end of the day, if this individual had not taken care of what he needed to take care of throughout his or her life, just because you're buried next to an imam is not going to work. You know why? Who taught us that? Harun al-Rashid taught us that. He's buried next to Imam al-Rida. But he's one of the khulafa who poisoned Imam al-Kadhim. Is anyone out there going to say, oh, since he is next to the imam in his grave, then he's off the hook? That's not how it works. Now here the Imam says, I don't want to be buried in Mecca. Imam Hussein, it's everyone's dream to be fighting, to die in Mecca. Unless Allah's satisfaction lies in you dying outside of Mecca. The criteria comes back again. You see, he didn't point it out. Imam Hussein didn't point it out. We're able to fish these out and figure these out. There's a pattern here. When he wrote a letter to Bani Hashim that we covered a few days ago, what did he say? He said, whoever comes with me will die. He didn't say will be defeated, will die. And whoever does not accompany me of you, O Bani Hashim, who might have stayed back, some of you in Medina, and not accompanied me to Mecca, if any of you don't aid me and you survive and you live, you will never be victorious. So right there he said, hey, sometimes life does not equal victory. And sometimes death will equal victory. What's the criteria? What's the active ingredient here? Allah's satisfaction. Here also he says, if I die outside of Mecca, I don't care. Karbala is just a desert, brothers and sisters, or was a desert. Now it's a city. Like what it is, if you want to buy property there, it's like gold. Why? Because that is one of the places where Allah's satisfaction manifested and was achieved. Wherever you have Allah, brothers and sisters, you will have wonderful stuff happening. Wherever you don't have Allah, it doesn't matter where it is. Even if it's in Mecca, Imam Hussein teaches us that. So we're trying to figure out what our responsibilities are in life and move in that direction, not caring where I'm going to end up, who's going to be happy with me, who's not going to be happy with me. And for me to be killed, he says, if I were to be killed outside of Mecca by a handspan, it would be more preferred by me than being killed inside the haram. And for me to be killed 2 handspans away from it is preferred by me than to be killed 1 handspan away from it. He's teaching Abdullah bin Zubayr akhlaq. This is like an akhlaq class. He's like, this is how you do it. If you want to get close to Allah, this is how you get close to Allah. By figuring out what he wants. Mecca is supposed to be preserved of all bloodshed. And for that, I'm going to leave Mecca and not let them assassinate me here. By Allah, if I was in the nest of some creature, they would eventually get their hands on me to do what they need to do to me. By Allah, they will transgress when it comes to me, the same way the Yahud transgressed on the Sabbath. What happened in the Sabbath, the Yahud, one of their laws, one of the main laws in that faith was that you have to observe the Sabbath. They didn't observe it. And Allah punished them severely. This is one of those sha'airullah. The Sabbath for the Yahud was one of the sha'airullah. One of those things that Allah doesn't mess around with. They didn't observe it. They tried to find a way around it. They broke its sanctity. Allah broke them. He says the same way that they did what they did, they're going to do the same thing to me. In other words, I am a walking haram myself. They're going to break my sanctity and Allah will punish them severely for it. In this dunya and in the akhirah. Mukhtar came and punished them in this dunya. He got his hands on a lot of them. And Yawm al-Qiyamah, God knows what's going to happen to these people. Recite a salawat. This is what he's telling Abdullah bin Zubayr. O son of Zubayr, to me being buried next to the Euphrates is more beloved than being buried next to the Kaaba. But now let's look at Abdullah bin Zubayr. What happened with him? He stayed in Mecca. Some want themselves for Islam, some want Islam for themselves. Right? It's like those people who eat to live and some who live to eat. There's a big difference between these two. Abdullah bin Zubayr, he stayed in Mecca. Although he knows Yazid is going to come for him too. Abu Abdullah left Mecca. We know what happened to Imam Hussein. What happened to Abdullah bin Zubayr? He stayed and stayed. Abdullah bin Umar wrote a letter to Yazid later when he went back to Medina. He said, hey, you got my bay'ah, don't worry about it. Okay, so that's 1 down, 2 to go. Yazid eventually did what he did in Karbala. Imam Hussein became shaheed. 2 down, 1 to go. Abdullah bin Zubayr. Abdullah bin Zubayr, his history, little history goes like this, the end of his life. That he stayed in there. He stayed. Yazid died. He still stayed. They tried to take over. Yazid sent an army to get him and his head. But Yazid died before his army could actually do anything. The next Khalifas that came, they weren't able to do anything. Marwan, who took power, his son Abdul Malik eventually sent an army. With who leading that army? A bloodthirsty animal by the name of Hajjaj bin Yusuf. And they went and they catapulted the shrine of Allah and the haram of Allah and the Kaaba and everything damaged. Eventually to get their hands on Abdullah bin Zubayr, and they did, and they killed him and they beheaded him. But at what price? Blood was shed in the sanctuary of Allah. The sanctuary, the haram, is not just the Kaaba, brothers and sisters. It's a bigger area. That once you enter that area, you can't kill anything. Those of you who've been to Hajj and Umrah, you know, when you become muhrim and you enter the boundary of the haram, I mean, it's just desert, but Allah says this is a sanctuary. If that fly or that mosquito sits on you somewhere and is sucking your precious blood, you can't just swat it and kill it. You have to pay it like a sheep or something for that. Think about it. 1 mosquito equals like a sheep. Or I don't remember the rulings exactly. You have to slaughter a sheep for that. That's the sanctuary of the haram of Allah. And then the bloodshed next to the Kaaba. Okay, this person has taken the Kaaba as a shell that they are hiding in. The Kaaba and the sanctuary of Allah is no different than a fort or a fortress for some. Why? Because they want Islam for themselves. They don't care what's going to happen as a result of their actions. I am the Kaaba. Everyone else has to serve me. He stayed in there. He had an army too, and lots of people had given him bay'ah too. Abdullah bin Zubayr, this grand Sahabi. But this was his fate eventually. He shielded himself with the Kaaba. 3 down. Now here I want to talk about something for all of us, and practical takeaway, and something to remember really. As we get more and more involved, are more and more active in our communities. This is even for those who lead the communities, even the speakers, even the sheikhs, even the ulama. It's very, very important. There will always be differences of opinion. That is just the nature of science for a non-ma'soom. Those who enter the sciences, the more expertise, the more there will be difference of opinion. It's perfectly natural. We have a problem, brothers and sisters, that we have to keep in mind. That is that, are we doing everything for Islam, or is Islam supposed to do everything for us? What do I mean? There will be an argument, there will be a disagreement between 2 people. 2 people who maybe might be leading a community. Yeah? And this will escalate to the point that things will be shut down. Before you know it, lots of the people out there who have no idea what's going on are affected by this. The quality of programs goes down. Things are shut down and canceled. And wait a minute, at the end of the day, we were doing all of this so that our people could stay on the right path. Now the means to that cut it off. Why? Because I have to get this person back or that person back. Although I might not even say it, but deep down inside, without me even knowing it, this is what it is. And the excuse for it is what? Oh, this person doesn't share my ideology. They're misguided. I have to make sure that I keep Allah satisfied. It reaches a point, it seems, this is just the discretion, my very, very humble and worthless discretion and evaluation. In some cases, you feel that it reaches a point where each person makes this little argument that wasn't really such a big thing, makes it into another Karbala. And the person that's against them is Yazid, and they are Imam Hussein. It reaches this point sometimes. The first thing that you will hear is that this is a center of division, that person is a person of division and disunity. We must stay away from this person, exclude this person, exclude that person. All right, there are red lines, true. But a lot of the things that are happening out there, they don't really need to happen. They're not that important. And if they do happen, and there are differences of opinion, what have the people done wrong? What have the youth done wrong? They don't even know what's going on. Before you know it, they have nothing to go to. That's when the real test comes. I really have to figure out, am I doing the right thing or not? Is it worth it or not? What is the price I'm paying? What am I getting in return? And I said this before too. Always look at the price you're paying and what you're getting in return. Don't always make it a matter of, this is another Karbala. This is another Ashura. That side is Yazid, this side is Hussein. Yes, there will be cases like that, but not all cases are like that. But we tend to look at things black and white. And when we look at things black and white, that's where everything goes down. And who pays the price? The normal people out there. It goes from a community all the way to countries even. And so many innocent lives are sometimes lost as a result of this. Although the two fighting each other are Muslims, the two sides. Why? Because whether we like it or not, whether we know it or not, whether we're aware of it and is it in our subconscious or not, we have that ego in us that I am right and Islam is here to serve me and not the opposite. There are people, but at the same time, who will see this. Before you know it, this person is even missing in action. You don't see them anymore. But when you sit down with them and you say, hey, where you been? He'll tell you that, yeah, I felt like if I push things forward more, that the cause will stay stagnant. There won't be any more movement. We're going to lose people. So I thought it's better to just, let things go. Good for you. Once again, that's not always the responsibility, but sometimes that is the responsibility. It really depends on each case separately. But I know eventually, we will probably go back and say, yeah, my case is always that type of case. I'm just getting this out there. We should think about these things a little bit. Having said that, I want to discuss a little bit of do not despair, inshallah. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa alih. So yesterday we talked a little bit about death. And yesterday I talked, the saying of Abu Abdullah that he likened death to a necklace that a young woman will wear. And I said that this death, the way we portray it sometimes for our younger generation is a little too scary. And yes, it will be scary for those who it's supposed to be scary for. But the ones who have lived a righteous life, they shouldn't be too scared. The ones who might have messed up in life but got back up on their feet, they shouldn't be too scared as long as they keep within certain boundaries. And at the same time, I said Allah is a little more flexible with the youth. He knows what's going on. When you're young, it's different than when you're like my age and up and above. I'm the borderline right now between youth and old people. I'm the borderline, okay? If you're younger than me, you're probably youth. If you're older than me, I'm sorry, but you're probably a little older. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hadith says He's a little more flexible with the youth. So you don't fret, you don't despair, okay? If you messed up, there's still hope. Now, I don't even like saying like there's still hope, as if, there's a little light at the end of the tunnel. No, there's a lot of hope. It's all light. Just get back up. Now, having said that though, and talking about death a little bit, and how, how it's hard for some people, they feel like no matter what they do in life, they're never going to make it spiritually. They're never going to make it to Jannah because whatever reason, whatever they've been taught. But there are others that we look at who made it. They made it, and then they speak to us. They made it, and they feel like, hey, now that I made it, I could have made it without all the hardship that I even put myself through. And that's what I want to share with you today. One example of this. Ayatollah Bahjat, you've heard his name a lot. And of course, there's a lot of things people say in his name that is unfounded, to the extent that his office, actually, after he passed away, they said, hey, if you ever hear a story, please make sure you run it by us to make sure it's true, because that's just how we are, once again. We just blow things out of proportion. Yeah? This story, though, I'll give you the references for it. Instagram and YouTube, where he's speaking himself, okay? So we're good, right? And also, one of the great akhlaq teachers, he also said this as well. What does he say? Ayatollah Bahjat, he talks about how his teacher, the great Allama Qadi, had said that, listen, you take care of your wajib and haram, one. And if that's not enough for you, take care of your salat, just praying it on time. And you will make it. So sometimes you say, don't despair. Why? Because someone thinks that they're going to go to the hellfire. You say, hey, don't despair. Sometimes, no, people know, okay, I know, inshallah, I'm on the right track, but I feel like I'm never going to make it spiritually, like to higher levels. Do not despair comes back again and says, hey, no. Don't despair even when it comes to this. Ayatollah Bahjat says, a person who takes care of that wajib and haram, and we have to learn our wajib and haram from our maraja, learns those, acts upon those, observes those, one. Two, takes care of their salat. That's it. Takes care of their salat and prays it on time. They will make it. That's the wording that's used. Mere sad in Farsi. Mere sad. They will make it. Now that doesn't mean if you do it for a week, you're going to make it necessarily. It might take 40 years. I don't know. I don't even know what making it means, to be honest. I'll tell you for sure, I haven't made nothing. I haven't made it anywhere. So I don't even know what making it means. But we know there is something out there that when you reach that, you say, I made it. He says they will make it. Now someone is smart. He asks a question there. He says, when you say pray salat at the right time, or on time, what do you mean? Which salat? A good salat, right? A good salat on time. A perfect salat on time. This person who's asking the question, he's trying to get this out of Ayatollah Bahjat. For Ayatollah Bahjat to say, yeah, of course, the perfect salat on time. So then we can turn back and say, okay, we don't got no perfect salat, so we ain't going to make it. Let's just let it go again. Do not despair. Because that ain't the case. Ayatollah Bahjat, you know what he says? He like smirks a little, laughs, he's like, no, of course not the perfect salat. The normal salat you pray. The normal salat, because if it was perfect salat, that's no good. You haven't even made it yet to have a perfect salat. It's irrational to say, make sure you pray a perfect salat on time. I haven't even made it yet. The ones who make it have a perfect salat. I don't got no perfect salat. All you need to do, pray your normal salat on time. One. Two, of course, with the condition of the wajib and haram, day in and day out, you have to observe. But if you have that, you will make it. And Ayatollah Bahjat, and some of you have heard this story. It's a very famous story. That he says, my teacher, Allama Qadi, said, a person who does this and doesn't make it can do la'na on me. That's real stuff. You know, sometimes I'll sit up here and say, people, this is the way to salvation, and then I'll run away after you never see me again. Sometimes I say, hey, here's my address. Here's my address. And I guarantee you that this device I gave you work. If not, you can come knock on my door. Then I better be sure I know what I'm talking about when I give you that device, right? Allama Qadi, we all know his address, Wadi Salam in Najaf. Although you don't need his address, you don't need somebody's address if, na'udhu billah, you're going to send la'na on them. But he says, hey, you will make it if you don't send la'na on me. Now, this is an extra now I want to share with you. This is the story lots of us might have heard before. Wow, that simplifies things a lot. Yeah. I thought Islam was more complicated than this. Well, it is for the ones who want to complicate it on themselves, but apparently these ones who made it and are not liars are telling us that it's not that hard. Yes, there's more, but if a person goes by the basics, they will know when the more is also needed now. The problem with us is that we want the more before we take care of the basics first. But this is more than just basics. He says they will make it. Now this is the part that I want to add now. Ayatul Bahjat, usually when you would hear him talk about this, he would say it on behalf of his teacher. He said, my teacher said this. Well, Ayatul Bahjat, do you believe in that yourself or not? Because we hear you do a lot of things. Ayatul Bahjat was known for that. You would go knock on his door. Like we would go back in the day, way back in the day when not a lot of people knew about him. You would go to his home, Fajr Salat. Go to his home, wait for him to come out. He would come out, he would walk to the masjid, like a 5-10 minute walk. On the way, he wouldn't talk to nobody. He's not wasting time. He's got a lot to do. On the way with his cane, he's walking, he's just reciting Quran. Reciting Quran, dhikr, like Sheikh Bachad, like, nice to meet you, Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Allahumma salli ala Allahumma salli ala Inna anzalnahu fi laylatil qadr wa ma adraka Quran. All the way to get to the masjid. It's as if we didn't even exist. He has a lot to do. But one of these great akhlaq teachers I heard recently, he was speaking, he added to this story. He said, not only did Ayatul Bahjat say, my teacher said, as a matter of fact, his son told us, after Ayatul Bahjat passed away, his son told us that he, at the end of his life, had reached this conclusion that this is enough to make it. So if he was silent before and he kept saying, my teacher said this, my teacher, and we weren't sure if he also believes in it or not, his son is saying that in the end of his life, he had also reached this conclusion. That it wasn't too necessary to do too many other things. If someone only takes care of this, inshallah, they'll make it. So we're not going to despair when it comes to hellfire and akhirah. And for those of us who know we're not going to go to hellfire, alhamdulillah, but we're still worried, are we going to make it even in this dunya spiritually? Inshallah, we don't despair. It's not as hard as sometimes they make it sound. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله صلوات